comes up again.
You can't
It's
go
we're in
live.
time.
You can't go live. It's just we're not ready. You know, we've not got the script yet. You've not sent us a script. You can't be live.
The script's not been arranged.
And then she said, "What are you doing here?"
Oh. Have you received your pay? I haven't had my payment for starting the stream yet. I could protest. This is not acceptable.
We'd better speak to the RMT. We need to speak to the RMT.
10 minutes before.
It says we're live.
He says we're live.
The
last 3 minutes we've been live.
Seamless, absolutely seamless. It's like something that's not very well organized at all. Good afternoon, good morning. I wasn't live when the other video up was, I hope. Evening, Matt. Let me just find a link and put it in other places. Live, yeah, I know. You're telling me that. Oh dear, yeah. I seem to put it up at the wrong time, which is, no surprise. That's what I'm like, isn't it? It's all right. So let's put that there. So there's actually been some news. If you chats want to talk about any of that news while I post this in other places, you're very welcome to. But there's been a few things happening. I think we are in the UK anyway. I think, although I know Ofcom's currently saying that the £75 license fee is going to be for BV loss and new stuff, I will almost put a bet down, a 75 quid bet, in fact, that they'll pull in all transmitters for commercial use.
How are they going to do that, though? Because you'd have, the only thing they could do is change that regulation to be ground-based only. That's the only way they could easily do it, because you can't. You could drop in if you're going to use it for commercial use, but then that's going to be impossible to police. The idea of them being license-free is they're license-free, because they are talking about different bits of spectrum here, aren't they?
Well, the problem they have is
on the license-free bit.
So here's the killer. So commercial operators flying a DJI M300 or an M2, the Mavic Pro 2, or a Mini commercially, or even, how do you even begin to prove someone's commercially operating? Because you can now fly anywhere commercially as such. So the bandwidth we're already on, which is in the 2.4 and the 5.8 gigahertz bandwidth, we're in all that jumble with very clever channel hopping, of course, because that's what we get. We get the nice channel hopping. And we sit in let me get this right. Is it 90 odd channels? Well, if it's Vitaba, it's 90 odd channels. And it just channel hops. And other systems use similar channels, but in blocks in the same frequency band. So I don't see how they can police it. If it's just for BV loss, then fine. I don't have a problem with that because they'll make no money. There's only about, half a dozen companies, if that can even do it. I mean, it's why do you need it? What's it for? What is it actually? What does it 75?
I am obviously a lot older than I look, because I remember a time when you used to have a license for your radio for 27 megahertz transmitter.
Yeah.
No, 27 megahertz was license free here. So our 27 of
no, they weren't.
Yes, they were.
Back in the early 70s.
He's young, isn't he, Gary? He's just a lad. Young. He doesn't remember.
They weren't free. You used to go to the post office and get a license for your radio control gear, and
really?
Yeah, you did. And that's why I'm saying I bet they bring it back in for all of it again.
So how do they prove? Because now...
It doesn't matter. You don't have to prove anything. You had to have a license to use the gear.
Well, they'll use the BBC radio license inspectors. They'll get them on tour. Those little vans with the aerials that spin around.
They'll get the vans. The vans.
The real question is why drones?
And the thing is...
Why not radio controlled cars? So
not even that. Not even
it was all transmitters.
Yeah, but what I'm thinking is, if you look at this, we're talking about aircraft and drones. If they're going to license, the one to go after is wireless home phones, right? Every wireless home phone is on the license-free band. So if you're going to go after something on a money-making scheme, you actually go after someone like that you have to then nail the manufacturers because the consumers aren't going to pay it and charge the manufacturers a license fee to use it. I don't see them. It's small pickings.
Yeah, but that's the secret. If you go after the home wireless phones, you have this mass rebate. People kick back. Too many people kick back, and there's too much overwhelming public, unhappiness. If you go for a smaller group of people and charge them a little bit more, you can make as much money, but the kickback's much smaller.
I just don't get how they can. It's no logical sense in it. How you can?
Why are you bringing? We're talking government. What's logic got to do with it?
This is true.
Tina Turner. What's logic got to do with it?
Hang on a minute. Who's got a calculator? So £75 times 180,000 people for a rough idea on how much. That includes everyone that's kind of.
That's if everyone did it.
That's if everyone
put down 20,000 people because that's how many will actually pay.
No,
they just need to add it to the drone registry. When you register your drone, you pay your license fee.
Yeah,
gosh, you're not telling me there's some way of tracking people that are likely to have a transmitter already, so therefore you could send the bill. No, that surely couldn't be a way of doing it, could it? No,
because we haven't got my details.
But this is different bands. This wasn't for the current band. This was opening up other bits of the band.
I know, but my argument would be this is the thin end of the wedge. And
this is the beginning.
We've been crying for extra spectrum, so it comes at a price. Was it 5 gigs, isn't it? 5 gigahertz I'm talking about?
Yeah, it was a bit further down, wasn't it?
I don't care. All of a sudden now, I really don't care. You'll notice now that, okay, now it's not 2.4 stuff. I really don't give a rat's. If they want people to pay for a frequency band that is wide enough to supply the data, because let's face it, 2.4 gets us a long way, but you're going to have to go lower in your frequency. You're going to have to go lower to get further distance, and that's going to be BV loss.
They're talking about bringing 868 into this, which will be straight on top of all the.
That's an ISM as well. How can they charge for an ISM?
No, they're going to protect the ISM. Yeah.
So this isn't for video either. This is only going to be telemetry, isn't it?
But
this isn't going to be video.
Ready control models here. So how's that going to work? Because you can buy TBS, Team Black Sheep system. They're on 868, are they not? Am I wrong?
Yeah, but have they got it all approved? Is it all?
Yeah, there's quite a few 868 systems. The Free Sky R9 is 868 or 900. You can basically control by software. Most of those things can. It's not much of a jump, so the firmware just determines what frequency band it operates on.
Can I just say, right, I really now want to screw with them when they get this set up. I just want to screw with them now. I'm just going to buy a couple of transmitters and just screw with them.
I'm just glad I've got the 3.3 gigahertz FPV.
I don't understand this, right? So if you just hold that, right, could bring significant innovations to several industries, but it doesn't, because we're already doing it within the frequency bands we have. So it's not going to bring what I will consider big, significant innovations, because anyone that wants to fly BV-less at the minute, we can just jump to SATCOM, right? And you could avoid this.
Or you can use a mobile technology that connects to public mobile network. So there's your 4G and 5G. So if you use any of those links, there it is there.
So hang on a minute, they're going to charge you, right? So I already pay for my mobile data. They're thinking that they're going to be able to prove that a plane flying or has got a SIM card in it. They're going to show my data. Oh, good luck with that, Ofcom. Good luck with that one.
Well, it's all up. It's just interesting they started talking about it to me, because the World Radio Congress have been talking for years about protected 25 years for protected spectrum for UAS, and it's just very interesting that Ofcom have jumped up now, and maybe you're going to do something that others aren't.
And let's not forget, Ofcom is second only to Her Majesty's Revenue Service when it comes to power.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do not.
To be honest, I think they got a bit more than them. They literally are the men in black.
Ofcom is the one lot. They're worse than the HMRC. You do not screw with Ofcom. They will have you guts for garters, and they take no prisoners.
And good evening, Mr. Archangel RC, with a lovely shiny new sign. What a lovely shiny new sign you have there.
Show us the sign. Show us the sign. Show us the sign.
There it is. It's behind him. Look. There it is.
No, I want to see it properly. I want to see all of it, not part of it.
Yeah, you can see all of it now. Goodness me. So that's that one, which I wanted to go through quickly. This one was interesting. The consultation response for extending the provisions for legacy and transitional category UAS. That's pretty good on part of the CAA, isn't it?
I'm not so sure. Is it? So think about it logically, right? So they had 4,500 responses. Now, I said they should go with the C ratings. I said they've got no excuse. Just because another drone's going to come out means is irrelevant if it's C marked or not. They should just stick to their guns and bring out the C ratings if that's what they spout about for safety. So they spouted it's about safety. It should not be delayed. Now, everyone that's paid for the A2 CFC, right, has now been shafted, if you like, because now that A2 CFC, they are stuck at 50 meters horizontal separation. They're stuck in limbo because no company now will go, oh, we've got to get this aircraft certified. We can wait a bit longer. We won't pay for that. So why would DJI now pay to get an aircraft C rated? Because there's no incentive for Autel.
The whole of the rest of Europe.
But this is the point. This is the point. Everyone's paid their money for an A2 CFC. So they're after the one-to-one rule. That's what everyone wants, right? But now, well, that has just been scrumpled up and we'll chuck it over there. And that is, to my mind, a bit of a niggle. Now, they might do what the IAA has done in Ireland. And I think if you double-check, Gary, there is... They are allowing legacy down to 30 meters because of the YASA delay. So when YASA put everything back, there was a company, and I'm sure in Ireland, you can do 30 meters horizontal separation with legacy up to 2 kilos. I could be wrong, but I don't think I am. And it would be interesting to see if our CAA go, well, hang on a minute, we're going to have to make some adjustments here, because let's face it, there's lots of dead bodies everywhere from drones that have hit people. No matter at 30 meters separation or 50 meters, you know, we've seen the bodies everywhere. So you could argue that the safety part of this is all just horse crock with the C ratings. The aircraft are CE rated, so your electronics are already C rated, and your transmission and everything else, they already meet a set of regulations, if you like. It's only the aircraft, like the propellers or the noise level, and let's face it, they don't sound like chainsaws. They're not as quiet as that sit-on ride-on lawnmower. They're a lot quieter. They easily come within the 7 meters, 82 decibel model flying rule that's been around for years for glow engines. We're well below that. The new stuff is quieter and quieter. The logical sense here in my head is they go, right, everything's sub 2 kilos. If you've got a slow speed mode, you can apply the one-to-one rule. However, if you haven't, you can't. And then between 2 and 4 kilos, we're going to let you sit at 50 meters horizontal separation or 30 meters in built-up areas from uninvolved people. That will make now more sense than ever for A2 CFC holders. However, there is, you know, you see a lot of people asking questions about the A2 CFC. So I don't know if it's enough training as such to allow the second part of what I've just said with 2 to 4 kilo drones. But I think it's very interesting. I mean, there's got to be some, hopefully, give somewhere in some logic.
Well, logic, again, you're bringing in the wrong words all the time. But I think a couple of years' time, a lot of these machines, old legacy machines, will be gone on anyway, won't they?
Well, will they? So your A2 CFC lasts 5 years from the day you take it, right? Now, we were told these regulations were coming. So everyone starts taking their A2 CFC because they're looking for that one-to-one rule. Like I say, you know, I've got my A2 CFC. That one-to-one rule, would it make a big difference to some of the stuff I do? To some of it, yes, it would. It would make a massive difference. It'd be perfect for some of the stuff I've been doing. However, that now has been kicked so far down the can, I would suspect that people will be renewing their A2 CFC before a C2 aircraft even appears now. Because, like I say, would DJI spend the extra money? Would Autel send their aircraft to get it C-rated? What's the point if that transition period has been extended by 2 years, for example? Would you bother
we're only talking about the UK. We're not talking about Europe.
No, YASA have extended as well. YASA extended as well. YASA kicked it down the road first.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, in that case, the UK can only do one thing, can only follow then.
Well,
YASA haven't kicked it down the can 2 years, though, have they?
I don't know the time distance, but they kicked it down the road. They said transition period will continue for another year or whatever it was. They did kick it down the road. So, you know, we don't have to follow what they say.
No, the manufacturers will, though, because it's a much bigger market.
Yeah, so that means, like I say, C-rated aircraft are not going to appear for some time. Who's going to go and pay to have their aircraft C-rated? Would you?
Yeah.
Would any of you, if you have the choice, right? I'll give you a choice. You've got a product, it's coming out now. The C ratings aren't going to be for another year. So your product's end of life will be closer to that transitional end. Would you even bother launching a C2 aircraft? What would be the point at all?
No, I hear you.
I just, from logical point of view, I just don't get it. Obviously, I'm wrong, but.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah, well, that's fine. As long as we all realise that, then it's absolutely fine. Let's put this one up. Not this one. Well done, Wingcopter. But let's lead in. Yeah, they did really well. 42 million. Like that company. Nice people doing well. That flipping AAIB Airprox reports this time. I pulled the one out that I thought was important to us, which is probably a bit of a non-event, but it was light aircraft turning towards a commercial operation, because this Airprox report it's got me, or the Airprox I can't remember what it was. It May reports. Well, it's got me, the whole set of them. It's got me angry because there were 2 drone versus airliners in there, which are complete and utter tosh, and yet they're believed. They're believed with absolute vigor.
Have you looked at Airprox Reality Check?
Yes, I have.
Have they
I
said?
I haven't seen. I don't think they've responded to these ones, but I really think it's time. It's time for us. So I wrote a little thing about that, because basically they didn't see the light. They couldn't catch the light aircraft. The light aircraft got away with it. They allegedly turned towards them operating. They'd filled out all the reports, done all the stuff, and it turned towards them. Maybe not. Could have been a clearing turn. It was doing aerobatics. But the bottom line is, as it says on this image, it's an untraced light aircraft. Nobody would admit to it. Now, we're just entering a time, Japan's already got it, where remote ID is a thing. So we are going to be absolutely identifiable in this scenario. Is it not time? Is it not time that if only filing a flight plan is what the chap has to do, or file something on something like Altitude Angel, then that's what the PPL must do as well. It's not fair that we have to be utterly traceable.
If you're not flying in New Zealand, if you don't fly controlled airspace, you don't even need a damn radio in an airplane.
Nor will this guy probably, and that's the whole thing. And if he's at low level and not spoken to anybody, and I don't quite know why they'd driven so far away from his home airfield, but he would have been from an airfield nearby doing aerobatics.
And ultimately, if there'd been an incident, he would have still been in the right, because the drone operator has to give way.
Yeah. And it goes back to remote ID, and I keep banging on about it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. You want us to have remote ID, the same tech, literally the same tech can be put in all those gliders, all those microlights, all those paragliders, all those airliners. They can all have what we have.
Well, funny enough, though, I think you'll find they're already in a lot of gliders, a lot of paragliders, and a lot of microlights. It's not that group of airspace users that are the problem. It's the like GA brigade.
Yeah, but the GA brigade, the CAA gave them, what was it, 250 quid towards towards
Yes.
electronic conspiracy. What the hell? Come on, give me my 250 quid. I'll take that.
It's thousands. They give them thousands in New Zealand to upgrade to ADSB. I mean, yeah, and we have to pay our own way. Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Well, we should be looking at choke points and things like that. In my head, it's. I don't know why the other night in the bath I finally realised some of the problems. Bruce has probably thought about this years ago, but so if you have 10 different airfields anywhere in the world, 10 different airfields might have bought their radars from 10 different vendors and their various other bits, and they don't talk to each other. What a pointless thing that you don't have a great big synthetic sky from 10 different radars, sensor fusion from all those things. None of it speaks the same language. Well, that's Altitude Angel's gambit, I suppose, isn't it? But you've got to get.
Stop being.
But you've got to get. You've got to get those big players out the way first, and they're utterly embedded in the air traffic game, and there's no way they're going to give way so easily. So we've got to build our own sensor networks, get our own camera networks out there. And the one thing I should have said in my little rant about that thing was the chap did have an observer. That observer should have had a pair of binoculars and taken the registration of the aircraft, and then it would have been identifiable. Type,
or it could have flown the drone closer and just
filmed to get a photo.
Yeah. That's what I've done.
Towards it, like the Lancaster.
Yeah.
Depends what camera you've got, the M200, but if you get the Z30,
no, if you get close enough, you'd be all right. You can definitely fly close.
Just land on the wing momentarily is no problem.
Yeah.
Well, we do know. Well, thankfully, the Canadian police have proven to us that the M210 will not take a Cessna out the sky. So, we have got that little bit of breathing space. It'll get a dint, it'll get a bit of a bang, but, it won't do a lot more.
Dayton University will not be pleased to hear that.
Well, you quoted that on Twitter, didn't you, Bruce? And that was in response to the one that saw a huge, enormous multi-rotor at 8,000 feet.
Yeah, what sort of multi-rotor was that? And the Daily Mail, as usual, had the props, and Dayton test the props on the multi-rotor just slashed into the wing. And they took the props off it. It was just a naked phantom. It's just like, where do these people get their information from? It's almost like that the Daily Mail is not the oracle we think it is.
Well,
it definitely isn't.
Well, the problem is, it's like when someone goes, multi-rotor, 8,000 feet. Part of me just wants to go, was your pilot drinking? Was your pilot sober? Because I think he's seen things.
And it had a bulbous camera too, according to the report. It must have been a commercial operator. And surely commercial operators have to file flight plans. What do they have to do? Don't they have to get some kind of, authority to fly?
You wouldn't have. You would have struggled, and you would have struggled because that was well within the TMA. You'd have struggled in anything. A light aircraft can easily have got up there. A man, that was. It's like.
So I'm just trying to work out how long it would take a multi-rotor to get to 8,000 feet. I'm just.
It takes long to get down.
Well, it depends if you want. It depends how much you're letting gravity help. Well, gravity's going to help you either way, but if your props are spinning.
Yeah, but I think have we not reached the point, because those sort of stories that then hit the press become quite a big deal and quite a big noose around the neck of the industry. Should pilots saying stuff like that, or anyone saying stuff like that, not be under oath?
Well, like I say,
was provide that evidence. It doesn't matter. Would he continue that assertion under oath? Of course, it's not the police investigating.
Yeah, but then they'd say that we won't get the reports because pilots will be afraid they'll make a mistake and get penalised for it. As we're going to be open and free and encourage the information to be reported. Here in New Zealand, we had some report published recently about a whole lot of there's been a lot of drones seen near prisons, and this is a terrible thing. Didn't say any drones had actually delivered stuff to prisons or actually flown over prisons. They were just seen near prisons. In fact, one was only heard, and they're very worried about it. I'm thinking, really? What's going to happen when people start drone deliveries? These things are going to be seen and heard everywhere. Are you going to get all upset about that?
Oh,
absolutely.
I can't tell that story on air. I'll leave that story out.
Drone deliveries of the future. Just ask Amazon. They'll tell you. Everything's delivered by drone.
Well, I missed that. Amazon are going for it, aren't they? Is it California? or something?
Some small town. But the zip line's got their Part 135 this afternoon, so that's quite good news for them. And so
What's a Part 135?
Allows you to be a cargo operator,
Air operator,
air operator, yeah. So that's quite a big deal, and they probably, well, if anyone knows how to do it, they are the people that know how to do it now. They must have many more flights than anybody else. I see one of the ladies in Tanzania, I think it was, has done 120 hours at night now for them. So I mean, there can't be many people that have done that sort of number. So I think it's their first year with them or something. So, you know, good on them. And
I'm sure the bureaucrats will be telling them exactly how to do things, though.
I think they probably will. I think they probably will. Yeah.
Don't get me started about regulators, though, or anything else. I've discovered something interesting, and it's just doing my nut at the minute. Because you're not allowed to. So we used to be able to, under your PFCO, we used to be allowed to drop things. As long as you do not hurt anything, you know, so you drop it, you know, as long as you're not near anyone and you're not hurting animals or, you know, causing harm and stuff. But under our current permissions, our new permissions, you cannot drop stuff. Not even ticker tape. Not even ticker tape.
Water or finely divided sand, I believe.
You can't even drop water. You can't drop sand. You can't drop anything.
How are you going to spray anything?
You can't spray anything. You can't drop anything. However, it's really funny. So I had this debate with them, and they were like, "Oh, PDRA 01 is just for simple operations." And I said, "Well, what's more simple than dropping something? It's the same as taking a photo. Actually, it's no harder." I says, "But here's the bizarre thing, and this is what I did. I couldn't grasp in my head, and I still don't understand it. I can walk into my shed. I can take any of my model planes, and I can turn them in what's called a toffee bomber. You know, so you can fill it full of toffees and then drop them. That's allowed under Article 16. The aircraft is not inspected. The aircraft has doesn't have to be anything special. It doesn't have to be in an ops manual or anything because it's under Article 16. It's hobby. It's permitted. It's for fun. Obviously, it's done in recreational areas, out the way, and everything else. However, if I want to do it commercial, you know, under my PDRA 01, and I want to drop stuff like ticker tape for a gender reveal or something, I have to apply for an OSC at £1,800. Okay, you have to spend £1,800 now. But I actually got from someone I know, another operator near me. I said to them, just be careful, because I saw they did a gender reveal. You can't drop stuff. And they said, oh, yes, you can. I've got an email from the CAA this year about it. And I said, really? Send me that. So I've just replied to the CAA and gone, you didn't consult us, the operators, about removing the ability to drop stuff where we could before, but also you've sent out a letter saying people can drop stuff. Just do a risk assessment. Can you please sort out what it is? Because your team is giving out, you know, there's misinformation getting out there, and it's please, you know, I was told to make an official complaint if I want to, but when you look at the CA's complaint system, you just go, no, that's just pointless.
It's clever of them, isn't it? It's very clever. All right, then that's the newsy bits I wanted out of the way. Now Nicola's here, so Nicola and Ian are our FPV fundies.
Has Nicola found his plane?
Yeah, have you found your plane? Yeah, was that 3 years ago now? That's quite a while ago now, isn't it?
Quite a while ago, yeah.
While ago. Well, what have you been flying, Nicola? What's on the bench for you?
Well, I'm actually done with the first video on the MFE fighter, and soon we'll start working on a modification for it to make it even more interesting, hopefully. Assuming no accidents ruin that. And I also got something new and interesting, but that was delayed because they'd send like two right parts, and there was supposed to be a left and a right. So I was waiting for a left part to arrive. It's a off-the-shelf VTOL thingy.
Oh, I thought you were going to be able to reveal it, but obviously not.
Well, yeah, I got the part now, and I'm actually thinking of heading out to the flying field either tomorrow or Thursday.
What
And
sort of vehicle is it? A tail sitter or four
Yeah.
engines and a tail sitter? Okay.
yeah, well, still has 4 engines, but it's a tail seat.
Okay. Is it the Swan K1 by any chance?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's RG Pilot firmware for that now. They're pushing. They're beginning to push that again, aren't they now? But it doesn't seem to have got the traction it perhaps deserves. Came out what about
Seems to
18
be
months
pretty
ago?
well made. I
Yeah.
actually did go to the flying field with it all boxed up as I got it from the couriers, and well, sadly, no underground warehouse. I wish that were true. They're spread across a few apartments and garages and workshops. It's ridiculous. I'm tripping over planes everywhere I go. Yeah. But anyway, I actually opened it up for the first time at the flying field, and seems to be pretty well made, pretty dense foam, pretty impressive stuff. Everything fits together perfectly. Just this one part was not the right one, and I couldn't assemble it. Hence, I couldn't fly it. And hopefully that will happen by the end of the week, and I'll have a video out soon after. And I'm also working on the blog post for the fighter, which is shaping up to be quite the pig. The blog post, I mean.
Not the aircraft.
Quite a few. Well, once I'm done modding it, it will probably be around 10 kilograms. So,
Ooh.
might be a pig itself. So, remains to be seen.
That's a big old 10 kilos. That's a lot of model airplane, isn't it? That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And what? So, what is the current? Where are we at with these new DJI-esque FPV systems? Was it running snail and jumping dragon or whatever? Where are we at with all these systems? Are they coming out or
nothing? A review unit has gone out. I'm not going to say who because it's been posted sort of on their channel in the back end. It's not for me to publicly out that, but someone's going to have a review unit this week.
Is it me?
It's not me. There's a review unit, but that's all I know. There's been no confirmation and nothing. You would assume that means we're not far off. What we'll get remains to be seen. I'm not expecting a public full launch. I'll be honest. If they can deliver the same resolution as DJI with OSD and the same basic functionality, it's a win. There's a lot of other stuff they've promised, but if they can get 720p with OSD and it actually works, it's a win. The 1080p is going to be pointless. You're not going to get the range on 1080p. It's going to drop bitrate really quick. It's going to have to drop down to 720p. That's just a bit of a headline one to grab people's attention spec wise. The questions remain over, will the DVR work? Because if we look at the reviews, reviews isn't the right word. The initial showcase, the airside DVR wasn't working. I think it'll be a tough swallow if it releases without the airside DVR there on day one. It's pretty core functionality that. But we're going to have.
That's the warp snail one. So what about the other crowd?
DJI.
No.
HD0. Their goggles is due. That's rolling on. There's nothing new on that. There's nothing really due on that for another month or two. So they're just ticking over. They've got a new VTX, which is landing. I've been doing a lot of repairs on their hardware in the last couple of weeks on the channel, mostly because people are destroying it.
Is it breaking? Yeah.
Mostly people are, the classic of digital being fragile. That
seems to not be able to withstand a head-on collision with the brick wall. Go figure.
Thought?
It is a design oversight.
That's a design flaw right there, isn't it?
Yes. And okay, it's fair to say more could be done to make the VTXs more resilient. But how far do you go with this as a manufacturer? The biggest problem is the lead-free solder. It's the soldering process and the lead-free solder is so soft, and it's not specific to them. It's just the modern techniques.
Doesn't seem to have hurt DJI much, though. I haven't heard of many DJI units suffering solder failures.
Well, they're pretty much covered in metal already. See, that's the even.
But isn't the freestyle VTX already in a metal case?
That one is, but that one isn't breaking. Yeah, that one actually isn't the one that's breaking. It's the Whoop, the small board. People are choosing the smallest, most brittle board to use in their aircraft because they want the lightest possible scenario. And there's more that could be done. The solder is soft. That's not their fault. That is what it is. You add to that the solder paste method, and you'll know what I mean by this, Bruce. Components basically just sit on the board. There's a minuscule amount of solder that actually holds it there. It's not like when you're there with an iron and putting solder on it. So there is some stuff users could do. I've touched all of mine up around the UFLs, but really it's been interesting to see the kind of damage, and some of these are getting, as thing said, who'd have thought it won't survive a brick wall at 100 miles an hour? This quality isn't very good. Well, do you know what I mean? You've managed to bend the board. There is a few weaknesses on them. We've noticed the MIPI chip has a habit of cracking. The one that they changed in production, the chip to a smaller one, and they're using like a piggyback board. And I think it's a plastic package because it has a habit of damaging very, very easily. But other than that, it's nothing manufacturer specific, but it's been very interesting to do the diagnostics and put together. I've been uploading more and more to repair.wiki this week and just putting in place now a process of diagnostics on drone hardware, because we've not had that really. There was some people who started doing it, but like flight controllers, they've all got like 4 Becks on them now. All the race controllers, they got a 5, they got a 7, they got a 9, they got a 12-volt Beck. There's a new flight controller coming out. It'll do 12 amps through the main Beck, which is incredible. That's on board, and this board is 30 by 30, and its total rating is 12 amp. But then again,
I liked your repair video that you put up today. That was on your Patreon, and now it's for all to see. So if you haven't seen it, dear viewer, go off to XJet's channel. He's got much better videos.
He's got much better content. One of the big ones this week, I managed to do a successful BJ swap, which took 6 attempts. And the problem is, doing it with a re-stencil or rebuild chip would be okay, but I don't have a stencil for that IC, so I had to lift one off another board, then look at where there wasn't enough solder, Bruce, and try to get the iron to put a little bit on the pads, and I messed around, and 8 attempts, and I genuinely jumped through the roof once it worked. It was like, yes, it is doable.
Of course, all the other chips had fallen off the board by that stage.
But it's practice makes perfect. But a lot of people are finding it interesting. And as we've seen controller prices going up, we're seeing hardware increase. People are starting to get more interested in, hey, I've spent 100 quid on this board, and in a crash, it's burnt that chip out. What is that chip? Well, if it's just a voltage regulator and they can get it for $4 and they've got basic skills, it might be doable. And that's the sort of direction we've been pushing some stuff to.
Mind you, the average soldering skills of the average drone flyer never cease to amaze me how poor they are.
My soldering skills are appalling. I'm terrible.
There's some I see on Rotor Riot and other places, Bruce, where they post, I've just built this, how does this joint look? And you're like, oh my God, don't turn that on. Don't.
You mean I've just built this and I got this roll of red wire and I've used it for absolutely everything, everywhere, or whatever. You
used to be able to buy some stuff. It was in a tube, and it was cold solder or something, and it was like, do you remember that? And you could use it for fixing frying pans and things like that. But it was actually just flecks of metal suspended in an adhesive. I think some people use that.
Yeah, where do I get that from? I need some.
Make a great fuse, wouldn't it?
It is, and it's
Nice
funny because
13 amp. There's 2 lines. That's 40
it's weird. It's like
amperes.
I'm always 6 months behind. I'll buy the equipment, or a year behind. I'll buy the equipment and start the content later. You know, we've had the scope for nearly a year. I've built up all the equipment over a year, and I used to do this a lot when I had the time, and it's been nice to get back into that actually. My biggest problem right now is I've had that many people reach out with equipment and say, "Look, we'll give it to you. Can you have a look? If you can fix it, send it back, or you can keep it." And I haven't got time, but B, I don't want to be handing my address out to the whole world. So I'm having at the moment.
If anyone wants Ian's address, just contact me. I'll give it
his
to you.
address
Gary's
is, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Gary,
Yeah, I can give that to you as well.
You know, there's been a few people I've gone,
You
yeah,
might
post it
be
here, but you suddenly
Batman.
realize it. I'm handing my address out to people I don't know, and you suddenly think, okay, need to be a little bit
True.
careful here.
But
Is
can't
it
you buy PO boxes over there?
Yeah, they're
Is it
300 quid a year, Gary. Now,
Shepherd? Yeah, but isn't it your address the Shepherd's Hut, Wales?
Shepherd's Hut.
Yeah, Shepherd's Hut in Wales.
in Mancloch.
He's like,
yeah.
he's like a backlight,
West
a flight
Wales.
controller, like to put up against the clouds. Look, it's Fix It Man. There he is.
£100 a PO box now. 300.
Yeah, it's
quid.
$200 a year here too. It's
Is
like
it?
that money for
Yeah, that's
jam.
what they are here, and we don't have post boxes in our houses. We have to
Don't
buy a post box.
You have
for
to
that.
buy it. Oh,
No,
right. Okay.
We
yeah,
have
yeah.
to buy a post box. for
I
that
may
money.
have to, but if I do that route, I'm going to have to start charging because I got to cover that cost. Do you know what I mean? Content isn't going to do that. And I have had this idea of if I do it, whether it's something like if the components are on the bench, it's a standard repair fee of $15, $20 or something. It's your choice if you want it. It is what it is. And then that can pay for the PO box a year. And it's but I haven't decided. I enjoy doing it, but you also then have to be careful that you don't take too much on. That's the problem with it. There's lots to do. But no, with the FPV stuff, there's no news. I think this week and next week we'll start to see it. That's when we'll start to see things move forward. It's a bit of a quiet period. I don't know, everything seems to have fallen off. My analytics have gone off the cliff this week. It seems to be calming down a little bit. There is the chip shortage is biting really hard.
But Fatshark, when's the Fatshark launch of that?
Well, that's what they've shipped out this week. So
that's the shipped one. Sorry, I thought it was.
Any news on DJI's new FPV system?
Nothing. We just don't know when. We know it exists. We just don't know when. I suspect DJI will be maybe August. Maybe.
Well, surely they'll be poised, ready to, when Fatshark can finally deliver numbers, go da-da!
They have a habit.
Yeah, they'll announce with all sorts of new features that the shark snail doesn't have, and then they'll ship it, and then they'll have to deliver the features later with an update.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how close they watch this, because this is a new dynamic. If they care about FPV, they will come in hot and fast. If they will literally go, boom, here it is. But if they were going to do that, they should have done it already, because they've got the pre-orders open. They're taking money now. What DJI would want to do is drop something, let them talk, and then drop something a week later. And that's not what they've done.
We've gone too far past those original announcers then.
Yeah, for them to have done. So I think that either says they have no interest in what they're doing at all, or they weren't prepared for it. And I wouldn't be shocked if they were. There are whispers they were deeply unhappy, because remember, Cadex are in the middle of this, who are a DJI partner, or were.
Well, quite. But then you might also suggest that Fatshark and Co have jumped the gun somewhat. And that's
Jump
how
the shark.
Jump the shark, of course.
So there'll be 3 systems, and then there may be 4 if DJI bring another one, and then there's OpenHD, which is continuing to develop.
I just like to put a word in for analog. It still works. It still works pretty well. Mr. Steele still uses analog, and he's one of the best quad flyers in the world. And Bot Grinder's tried HD Zero, but I think he said he's going to stick to analog, except for his long range stuff.
Did we all see that video of the sorry, I jumped on you there, Ian, of the autonomous FPV flying that was doing the rounds? I was a bit like, Oh yeah, what's the point of the competitions anymore then?
It's not
and I don't know. Did you click through and see the other research ones where they actually have a bloke with a crash helmet on in the ring, pushing some of the gates around and moving them, and then they blow wind across and smoke across and all sorts of things. Like,
It's
It
quite
just
funny.
sounds like another day at our club.
It's quite
Yeah,
funny.
well,
It's
yes.
a lot of stuff people don't realize is out there. I was with some friends this week and we were talking, and we were talking about stuff, and I got onto Boston Dynamics, and the conversation came out through DJI and Brendan. I said I know someone who works there now, and stuff, and he's and we came around to the whole. We were talking about electric cars, ironically, and Hyundai came up, and
Oh,
the whole
yeah.
conversation
You said.
pivoted all the way around, and they're like, oh, "What do you mean, Boston? They're hearing it?" And I've said Atlas, the dog, and they go nothing. And I said, "Let me just show you something." They were
and then
horrified.
seen it.
They were literally looking for a bunker. When I showed them Atlas jumping through the hoops and jumping around, they're just going, "That's Terminator." And I went, "Oh yeah, yeah." And I went, "That's 4 years old," and that's what they want to show you. that's what they're willing to show you. Wait until they let out what they don't need. How far are we off Iron Man? Maybe not quite as far as we thought with those other bots that he had. But it is interesting when, Hyundai, we were talking about them, and they are making a real big play.
They are, and they're the only people with a sort of a sensible timeline, as it were, for their renders and BS. But it is a little bit more sensible. I don't think the Coventry vertiport is a very sensible thing, and they're part of that. But that's another kettle of ball games. But their timeline for their vehicles, and the fact that they've already, they've moved to the delivery side of it more than the man.
But they're buying up very real companies and taking on very real people. And that's the difference. Look, we can, people have had their ups and downs, but Brendan is an expert in the industry. Period. That's a fact. We've got them buying Boston Dynamics. They're putting their money with them. This isn't like a lot of these companies put a sheet of render out and, well, we've got staff working on this, we'll have you. Whereas Hyundai we've just bought the world's most interesting robotics company.
Considering Honda has been for years trying to do little robots, because they've been doing it for years, and Boston Dynamics come along and it's like, holy smokes.
Well, they stopped, but Honda got out of it a couple of years ago, didn't they?
Yeah.
But it's funny, that's a classic of the Japanese. That happened in the camera industry as well. Exactly the same thing happened in the camera industry. They were well ahead of anyone else, but they just don't. The Japanese often seem to not be able to capitalize on it. They're very good at creating, sort of laying the groundwork and the path, but it's not often they take it forward. We saw it in TVs, they were successful and then they weren't, in electronics, and they always seem to lose it somehow. I don't quite know how, but they do.
I'm just
nothing
looking
against the Japanese culture, by the way. This is just an observation of that.
Yeah.
I'm looking. I remember last week you said we should have render of the week, so I'm quickly going back through. I can't find the best render of the week. We haven't had a good one this week. That's not very good. But what it has reminded me is of this little story that I had forgotten about, which I will try and share now, which is this one here. Did we all notice that Swiss Airspace actually shut down for a couple of hours due to malfunctions in their air traffic systems, in their computers?
That can't happen, Gary. I think you're making it up. There can't be any
making it up?
fault in the
all right.
It was a drone. It was
That's
a drone.
not
You know
possible.
it was a drone.
Drone.
Isn't it interesting though? Isn't it interesting that they closed it down, and it was I knew what it was and I forgot what it was. It was a couple of little glitches and it wasn't very serious. And as we've been saying for this whole time, all you've got to do to upset air traffic control is just make the fridge turn on and off, or run the kettle up with no one being near it. You don't have to get into the big ticket systems. They'd be frightened if you just did that. So Swiss Airspace shut down.
Apart from in the UK, because they've got no staff who'd notice the fridge being turned on and off. Everything would carry on as normal in the UK. There's no one there.
I thought it was just the UK, and then I saw a news report, and it's not just the UK where there's no staff in the airports, and what they say. What was it? There was another one where an airline's 12,000 pilots short. Now, if you're 12,000 pilots short, let's be clear. You should already have known you have X amount of pilots. I do wonder about some of these airline issues. If it's not the fact that half of this stuff is the ghost flights, because not every flight flies as such, but the plane has to be in a certain place X, Y, and Z. But during lockdown, they allow them to reduce those flights. But all of a sudden, these airlines, they will know how many pilots they've got, right? This should be no reason to suddenly go, yeah, we've not got enough pilots. You already knew this well in advance. You knew this a year ago because you know who's coming through the training. You know, you'll be tracking those pilots because either they're sponsored by them, as in, you know, they're paying the airlines paying their way through, which often happens, or there's a block coming through and they will know, you know, they'll be interviewing and everything. They know how many pilots they've got or not got. They know how many have retired. These all of a sudden being 4,000 pilots short or 4,000 flights. They knew this months ago. They're full of twaddle, a lot of them, I'm afraid. That's my rant.
He's got an opinion on that, hasn't he? He's definitely got an opinion.
The problem is, but can you imagine, right? If you run a company, you know how many planes you've got, you know how many pilots you've got, right? So you know those two things. Let's be clear. You know, if all of a sudden, how do you lose like 3,000 pilots or 3,000?
It's not necessarily the pilots, is it? It's the baggage handlers and the other bits of the chain who are not willing to come back and work for Buttons anymore.
Can't they work from home?
They laid everyone off. It's really simple. Yeah. They laid everyone off, and everyone, funny enough, has got to pay the mortgage. Now, I know this is a complex task for these people who are on £1 million a year, and they're sitting there going, well, we got rid of them, and we took a bunch of money.
Surely they'll come back.
Well,
They'd love to come back.
We took a bunch of money from the government, and that kept them at home for a little bit. And whilst they were all working at home, they set up TikTok accounts and went on social media and did all this stuff. But then what they then went on and did was got a second job while they were still on furlough, because believe it or not, it wasn't illegal. And then they worked out that, well, actually, I prefer doing this than going back to my crappy handler's job. So they gave me redundancy and I left. That's the crux of what's gone on here. Did you know people could be on furlough and take a second job legally?
Well, funny enough, I got caught up in all this. I actually got caught up in all this chaos. I was in... I don't know if you saw it in where you were, Gary, but you know, Dublin Airport was suffering. Ian, do you remember Dublin Airport a month ago was really suffering? Guess who got caught in all that gibberish? Me. I missed a flight, right? So I finished the concert run. We finished in Dublin, and I was on an early flight. So I get there, I get through everything. I go a bit early because, you know, just being commonsensical. And then I go through security. And literally, you start queuing, and the queue seems to move quite quick. But you're in that queue for like over an hour, just to get through into the area where you can then get to the terminal, you know, your actual plane, so your airside, if you like. It's well over an hour. I think it was about an hour and a half, 2 hours. But it meant that I was just out. So my luggage was checked in like 2.5, 3 hours before it needed to be. So my luggage had gone through well and truly. So I get to the gate 40 minutes late. Sorry for boring you, Ian.
It was
so I get through 40 minutes late. I've missed my plane. And I turn up at the gate and I just go, and they go, where were you? And I went, that chaos back there.
But don't they take off all unaccompanied luggage before they fly out these days?
They did, thankfully, and what happened is they put me on a later flight that day. I had two choices. It says, we've got an earlier flight, but you have to go back through security if you want to take it. And I said, oh, you can take the one at 3 o'clock. I says, I'll take the one at 3 o'clock. I am not going back through that security today. So I just sat in the airport for a few hours reading a Jack Reacher book because I did not want to go back through that security chaos. And you know, it was all right. They sorted me out. The airline were really good, so... Well, that's British Airways for you.
Well, that's so boring that I'm going to go now. No, I've got an appointment. I've got to go.
Well, yeah, I got
All right,
I'll be back. Yeah.
all right.
But
Look
Mark,
after yourself. Yeah, I know we're coming up to the hour, so we'll all go in a minute. All right. Look
Okay.
after yourself.
Bye, gentlemen.
Lovely to see you. Take care.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate.
But
So-
yeah, I mean, these luggage things, though, and all these people, you would think the airports would have been, recruiting well in advance. Because do you remember when we come out of lockdown, says, "Oh, you can go on holiday," and all of a sudden, so many people wanted to go away. Do you remember after the first lockdowns, they had that little break when they said you can go?
Yeah.
So many people wanted to go away. Don't these managers, like you say, that will get paid millions, do they not have any concept what's going to happen?
Don't forget. Yeah, but don't forget they couldn't ramp up the airline completely because countries like this still weren't letting the flights in. So you jumped the gun over there a little bit. So the old shape of air transport and travel was completely knocked out of kilter, and the way it works, with many countries still not accepting aircraft. So it was a tricky thing to judge quite what to do and where to move all the chess pieces.
Well, let's be clear. All our airports didn't judge it very well at all.
Yeah,
they were all horrendous, and I just don't get it. But then we've seen
what I was saying. That's what's happened around the world. That's what's happened around the world. And as Ian said, if you found a better job, or you decided that's it, you don't want to be treated like that, then you're not coming back. And you need I'll round this rant up, I suppose, but didn't actually the whole COVID thing all around the world prove that the people that we need are people that work in supermarkets, are hospitals, are this, that, the other. Those were the really important people in the world, not the CEO on bajillions of dollars a minute. Those were the important people.
The lorry drivers, the bus drivers, the railway, they were all important to keep us going. Those guys, they were all heroes, really, if you like. They were just, without them, we would have been well and truly stuffed.
Everyone, well, all around the world. That was everywhere. But personally, I quite like it if they get grounded, because, of course, then there'll be less pilots in the air to give very spurious Airprox reports. So that's what I'll say on that one. So what other news have we seen before we go? Royal Mail were superstars, Lamskull.
I was just going to say about your Airprox reports, why is it we still don't report things as UFOs?
Oh, exactly. That's what they would have been. But that's what it would have been. 50 years ago, it would have been a UFO.
Well, 10 years ago, six years ago, it would have been a UFO. 8 years ago, UFO. If you start going back,
it isn't properly identified, is it? Just they've given a name to something. So it is actually a UFO if it was something flying, because it's an unidentified flying object.
I do wonder if there's a freedom of information request that should go into the CA and go, okay, so starting in the year 2000, how many reports were UFOs and how many were drones? And you could imagine watching the chart of each one and where the drone overtakes the UFO. And I think that would be an interesting thing to put at the CAA, because I think that would be intriguing.
Is Ian working on the shipping of some rulers? Are you working on the shipping of rulers?
This is something to go to someone. I just forgot I needed to do it, so I just remembered now. So,
well, look, we're just coming. We're 4 minutes short of the hour. I can't think of
there is going to be an interesting article coming. I've got something I got to write up, and it's a bit of a history actually, and the basis actually is it on FPV, but out of China, and I'll touch on it quickly, which is something we've discovered. All of the current crop of digital FPV systems, whether it be Autel's system, DJI's, even Hewlink, are all based off the same technology by a company called Leadcore. Now, the core tech goes back. Leadcore were an arm of the Chinese government's wireless communications agency, so it was government owned, but all the base technology for the chipsets goes back to there. And it's quite interesting that all of these systems are based off LTE. Now, what we have here with all of these manufacturers is something that would not have happened in the West, because to do what they've done, they've had to gain access to the low-level LTE SDR, and they've tinkered with it. And the basic reality is no manufacturer who of those core modems in the West is ever going to allow a company to do what the likes of DJI and Autel have done. And I suspect, and this is pure conjecture, but I suspect a lot of this has been state-sponsored development. I don't mean out and out paying for it, but the Chinese government have helped develop a company which is designed to compete with the likes of Qualcomm and others, but they've then allowed Chinese manufacturers much deeper access to it than would happen in the US, UK, and the rest of the world, especially outside of military applications. And whilst a lot of the core technology may not be Chinese, it's still based off patents in the US and everything. What's clear is they have got very, very deep into the core LTE protocol, far deeper than we've seen anyone else do anything. Everyone else layers it on top. It's LTE and you transmit the data over that protocol. What DJI have done is bent the protocol. They've changed it. Its core is LTE, but it's certainly been adapted enough to allow them to do something someone else hasn't done. But the really interesting thing is it all goes back to this one company, which is Leadcore, which technically no longer exists. They vanished.
Yeah, they probably did.
Just like many people in China.
What was that then? That was your Leadcore. That was.
But it is interesting that, and it's not that HearLink is Chinese made. What I mean by that is the chipset HearLink uses, which is the P1 Pinecone, was developed in partnership with Leadcore. Leadcore made the original chipsets in DJI. Leadcore powered the chipsets in Autel, and it all spreads out, and you start looking at Leadcore, and then they're part of another company, and it all layers back. And it's very interesting that all of the decent digital FPV systems have come out of China and are all based on this Leadcore IP and technology. And we even believe this new system will be as well.
And how do we spell it? Mitchell's asking.
Leadcore, just Leadcore. So Leadcore
as in Lead.
Yeah, Leadcore.
As in the heavy stuff.
No, I've discussed Leadcore many of times because we knew the chipsets DJI used in the past was Leadcore. What we didn't fully understand was the relationship and how deep rooted they were. And a lot of the work the hacking guys have done, Jonas and those have delved into the code. And, if we take the DJI P1, this current chipset, it's just a variant of Leadcore. It's a custom chip nonetheless, but it's just off-the-shelf IP blocks, building blocks of a chipset that have been put together to do a specific task. But DJI have then gone under the hood of the deeper LTE modem and tinkered. And this does align with a story that I was told, that the second DJI's FPV system come out, which, by the way, was the first to use this new tinkered version, that relations between China and the US soured. I had some people reach out to me over it, and they thought that DJI had stolen American tech, and it's never going to be that simple. But what I wouldn't be shocked at is if they'd seen how far in they allowed public companies to go, which hadn't been done before. And if you go back far enough, this I suspect the IP for LTE is US based. Generally, this stuff is developed in the US or the UK by some of the big wireless providers. And I suspect there is at least meant to be some agreement somewhere that this stuff isn't messed with, because you have the potential to open up hacking of the mobile phone network. Going in that deep has big implications.
Well, that's why you do it, isn't it? That's why you'd set up a happy byproduct is, oh, look, great FPV digital. Oh, that's a happy byproduct of getting in there. Yeah. You'd want to fiddle around in there.
The original story didn't make sense. The original story didn't make sense. But if you add this picture up, What China have clearly seemed to have allowed is people to go deeper into this LTE system than we've seen anywhere else in the world. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. I don't see Qualcomm going, yeah, you guys poke around in there and see what you can do. That's not, you go, Skydio, you go poke around in there and have a play. And it's no coincidence that, just one thing, it's no coincidence that Parrot, Skydio, American, European companies are all still having to use Wi-Fi. That is no coincidence.
Well, I mean, one could argue because, motors, props, they're all about the same. Flight controllers, they're all about the same. Software stack, okay, that's for the UX for running it, that's a bit different. But you could argue then that this really is the advantage that China's had to drive forward in the market, is that crystal clear video, which no one else had. So all the other bits, we can copy that.
And they have. Still, no one's been able to deliver a product quite like DJI, plus or minus them. What they do every time, and here again with the Mini 3, they deliver a product that people buy in the droves.
Yeah. Well, it definitely works, and that's how they got there. Clever, shiny shaped design in the Phantom that the wife or girlfriend would allow in the house, and then the camera systems.
I got a big article I'm going to write up on it. I might do it as a video. I don't know. It's going to be a bit complicated to do as a video. It might just be better as a piece. And if it does go, I will share it with you. It'll go on.
Wonderful piece in SS News.
It'll go on. It'll probably raise a few eyebrows because how much we think we know. It's always a thing, but a lot of it lines up. And there's a company called Aristonian right in the middle of this as well.
Oh yeah.
We think Aristonian are going to be in the middle of the chip. We think they're all involved as well. They're all in the mix. Again, a lot of their stuff appears to be based off lead core, in the very least. But it makes sense. And is China mad? If you look at the very basics, the Chinese government owned lead core, and that technology has been widely spread across China. That's what it's designed to do. Let's be honest. And they're benefiting from that. And I think one of the biggest problems in the US, and take FLIR as a classic example, whilst FLIR has been an extremely successful company, it's almost impossible to move its hardware around the world. It makes money, but it makes money because there's been a stranglehold on the cost and the price of the cameras.
Well, Sandy War buying, limitless Sandy War buying, and the same goes for AeroVironment. They've been very, very lucky, right place, right time. Sending off things into the battlefield where I think was it 4 or 6 channels is all they had with not the Puma, the Raven. You snap in the battery and it might go off by itself because someone else is using the same command and control frequency in the next trench. I mean, really, they're great, but they're not spectacular systems. Did we see? Well, that's the video. The frame I used this time, the flipping watchkeeper down in Akrotiri on its back swimming.
I saw that one.
How do we keep losing the watchkeeper? It's not like it's bad weather out there.
Because it's badly built.
There you go. Yeah. How was it happening?
They need to change the flight controller. That's what they need to do. The flight controller or something else isn't quite right.
They need to go through the whole aircraft.
To be honest, I'm not. That is the problem. These companies who start flight control. I know. I'll take Ardra Pilot. Every type of failure that's known to man has been seen in Ardra Pilot over the 10, 15 years. It's however old the project is now. The problem is people go out and go, oh, we're going to create a piece of code from scratch that flies. And you're having to do all the same relearning, all the same problem solving. And the reality is they've got that. And every time this happens, they're probably learning. They're probably going, we need to put a mitigation in for that. But that was done 10 years ago in PX4 or Ardra Pilot.
Well, I have to get a little bit is it Bobby, that man, I can't remember his name, a little bit of respect for him because I see he said, no, we run PX4 and we run Ardra Pilot and we run our own flight stack as well. We've got enough computing power to run 3 and have a look at it. That's like, because a lot of other people just hide. Oh, no, it's all our own very special proprietary code that we've spent millions of hours making, Yeah, it's
something goes wrong in Hydropilot. Tridge looks at the logs and went, "Oh bugger, how did that happen?" Okay, right. We need to do this, and it's nailed down, and it's fixed, and it moves on. And the wonders and the amazing of open source, apart from things plain, which we'd never know what the actual cause of the loss.
No, that was just it's up on top of the mountain as a monument to
skeleton.
FPV.
The phone would have rotted. You've just got the mechanics left sitting there on the ground like a bony corpse.
Well, you've got to go out and find it, Archangel. You've got to get up there, mate. You've got to go and find it. But anyway, on that news, look, we've gone over the hour now. 6 minutes. Any more before we go?
The NASA helicopter looks like it's in trouble. It looks like it's in real trouble now. Because it's been working. It's been working for a lot longer than anyone ever thought. It's been flying on another planet. It's BV loss. They've set a record for BV loss that even Archangel's going to struggle to break. Let's be honest. So Nikolai's going to, he's going to have to push.
What are we talking about?
The NASA helicopter
on Mars.
Yeah.
Oh.
So you've got to beat that, that record, that BV loss record. You're going to have to do something special.
But I'm curious though, did they get their FAA certification for that?
Yeah. It's on Mars. I don't think they needed it. I don't think they needed it for Mars.
Definitely got it.
Are we certain? Have we seen it?
Yeah, it's in a hangar somewhere in Hollywood, isn't it? It's in a hangar in Hollywood somewhere on a bit of string. It's on string, a hangar in Hollywood.
No. But I think those are illegal flights without authorization.
Can you imagine the Martian? Do you remember the animation, the Warner Brothers little Martian guy coming out with the authorization?
But in a similar vein that I'll then end this on, the Voyager spacecraft are going out of comms, aren't they? Been going since 1977.
I've got to go, guys. I'm getting waved. I will speak to you guys later. No problem.
That's a good time. Let's all go. Thanks, everyone. Whatever you're doing, wherever you are in the world, take care. Look after yourselves. We'll see you again next week. And I'll try and get the timings right this time. Cheers all. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
All right, guys.